Welcome to BK Academy of Chess. The Four Knights game is a chess opening that begins with the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6. The knights may develop in any order to reach this position. Here, on move 4, white has many options, including bishop b5, d4, bishop c4, a3, knight takes c5, and g3. White's most common move is bishop b5, the Spanish variation, after which black has three major alternatives: bishop b4, knight d4, and bishop d6. The symmetrical variation bishop b4 often results in a quick draw, but it is possible for either side to play for a win. The aggressive knight d4, the Rubinstein variation. Note that white cannot win the pawn with knight takes c5, since black regains the pawn with the advantage of the bishop pair after 5. Queen e7, knight f3, knight takes b5, knight takes b5, queen takes e4, queen e2, queen takes e2, king takes e2, knight d5, c4, a6. Also after queen e7, if white tries 6. e4, black has knight takes b5, knight takes b5, d6. So after knight d4, white most often plays bishop c4, when black usually continues in Gambit fashion with bishop c5, knight takes c5, castle, knight d3, bishop b6, e5, knight e8, followed by d6. And after knight d4, another line, which discourages many ambitious black players from playing the Rubinstein, is 5. Knight takes d4, e takes d4, e5, d takes c3, e takes f6, queen takes f6, d takes c3, queen e5, which tends to lead to a quick draw after queen e2, queen takes e2, and after 7. e takes f6. If black checks white with c takes d2, white has bishop takes d2, queen takes f6, castle, which is dangerous for black. In recent years, after 4. Bishop b5, black has had some success with bishop d6, taking the sting out of the possible bishop takes c6, which is met with d takes c6, leaving black with good chances. And if white plays quietly, black will regroup, for example with 5. Castle, rook e8, bishop f8, and d6. If white plays d4, the Scotch Four Knights game arises. This leads to a more open position, which can also be reached from the Scotch game. A further possibility is bishop c4, the Italian Four Knights game, popular in the 1880s, though this line is regarded as inferior according to Pinsky. Black can preserve the symmetry with bishop c5, leading to the quiet gioco pianissimo. A favorite among younger players due to its simple and easy development, but has also been used successfully by Nigel Short against Antonetta Stefanova. The problem with playing for this position via the Four Knights game is that after bishop c4, the pseudo-sacrifice of a knight with knight takes c4, the fork trick, is a serious try for an advantage. Then bishop takes f7, though superficially attractive, relinquishes the bishop pair and central control to black. After 5. King takes f7, knight takes c4, d5, knight eg5, king g8. Black is already threatening e4, and after d3, h6, knight h3, bishop g4. Black has a very powerful position, with an unopposed light-squared bishop, a strong duo of pawns in the center, and a safe king, while white needs to work out how to get the displaced knight on h3 into play. Often it will need to be played back to g1. After knight takes c4, a better chance for equality is knight takes c4, even though d5 regains the piece with an excellent game, for example with bishop d3, d takes c4, bishop takes e4, bishop d6, d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, castle, and white cannot castle, because of bishop takes h2, followed by queen takes d5, so white played bishop e3, queen e7, and this was from the match Tartakover, Hopkins, London 1922. And now the natural castle, bishop e5, would be awkward for white. Note that after 8, d4, more ambitious is e takes d4, knight takes d4, castle, as in a match between Sigbert Tarrasch and Emanuel Lasker in 1916, which led to a black win in 23 moves. If white takes with bishop takes d5, black could simply play queen takes d5, knight c3, queen d8, as noted by Yakov Estrin. Or if white attacks the knight with bishop b5, d takes c4, knight takes c5, black has queen g5, as noted by Ludwig Collin. If white plays d4, black has d takes c4, d5, knight e7, knight c3, c6, from the game Cordell, Shapley, 1905. Note that after knight takes c4, white can avoid the fork with 5. Castle, transposing to a variation of the Boden, Kieseritzky Gambit of the Petrov's defense. The quiet waiting move a3, called the Gunsberg variation, is a specialty of Polish Grandmaster Paweł Blem. White gets no advantage after d5, a Scotch 4 knights game reversed. A dubious gambit is knight takes c5, the so-called Halloween gambit. After knight takes c5, d4, white tries to seize the center with his pawns and drive the black knights back to their home squares. Grandmaster Larry Kaufman says that this line is refuted by knight c6, d5, bishop b4, d takes c6, knight takes c4, queen d4, queen e7, which he attributes to Jenpinski. According to Max Yu's opening series volume 11, black has a decisive advantage after knight takes c5, d4, knight g6, e5, knight g8, bishop c4, d5, bishop takes d5, c6. Igor Glek has favored g3, preparing development of the bishop to g2. According to Pinsky, black's main responses are bishop c5 and d5, both of which are reckoned to equalize for black. A Halloween gambit style knight takes c4 has also been tried at the Grandmaster level. And there you have it, the 4 knights game. Thanks for tuning into BK Academy of Chess, where together we build, and with BK Academy of Chess we even the score.